Hello. Just waiting on Steve.
A little less about the software.
Okay.
Something.
Because my guess is wherever you found it, it's just one place that we missed. Because we didn't used to be closed Monday and Tuesday. When we first opened, we were open every day. But we just found it to be so quiet on a Monday and Tuesday, we decided to close.
Thank you for joining us. Can you guys hear me?
Kabir, this is Steve Grubbs. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I see that you have joined by the phone. Which one is your?
Kabir, I can't hear you very well.
How about now?
That's a little bit better.
Let me mute all of them so that way you should be able to hear me.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
You're still a little bit faint. Sounds like you're far from your computer, but I can mostly hear you.
Okay, that's good. So I'm on a Bluetooth, so sure. So do you want me to make you the host? So you want to take it over? Or?
Yes, if you make me the host, I will try to take it over and launch my presentation.
All right, so you're on the host, and yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you see my slides now?
Nope. You might have to share the screen. And
how about now?
No.
Okay. Yep, I'm there now. Let me share the screen. Okay, sharing it.
Yep.
Okay. How about now?
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
great. Well, if you can hear me and you can see my first slide that says VictoryXR and Education Strategy for VR Arcades, I will go ahead and start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that look good? Okay, very good. Well, Shabir, thanks for having me. I'm the founder of a number of different companies, but the two relevant here are VictoryXR, which is one of the world's leading education curriculum companies for virtual reality and augmented reality. And then second is a company called Chalkbytes, which owns, one of its assets is Paradigm, which is our own virtual reality arcade. And so those assets that I create in VictoryXR, we test out at Paradigm, which is our VR arcade. Now, we're from a relatively small community, so you know it's a different experience than perhaps those that might be in a larger community like London or Chicago or Toronto. But it's a good proving ground for us. And so what I'm going to talk about today are some different ways that you can use virtual reality and augmented reality content to attract daytime users through education. And we're going to talk specifically about 3 different events that you can have and the return on investment, the cost, the expenses, and potential for adding some daytime usage to a facility or maybe even weekend usage. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Back up here. All right. So the three strategies we want to talk about are, first of all, virtual reality tutoring. Second of all, STEM.
Steve, yeah.
STEM
Before you, excuse me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Shabir.
Yeah, so if anybody has a question, there's a button called raise hand. So anytime you guys have a question to Steve, just click on that button and then I would unmute you. You could go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay. So our 3 strategies are virtual reality tutoring, STEM field trips, and homeschool drop-in days. And these may not be relevant in every community around the world, but at least in the United States and in most North American cities, you're going to find 2 or 3 of these relevant. And outside the United States, probably the same. So STEM field trips, that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And in many countries around the world, there's a tremendous emphasis on this, just simply for obvious reasons. These are fields that are in great demand right now. So let's go ahead and first talk about virtual reality tutoring. And I'm going to start by showing you a short video.
Science tutoring and virtual reality works, and it adds another income stream for VR LBEs.
This is one of the best finds I've come across in a long time, and for their learning the best. VictoryXR has certainly put out the most comprehensive science content that I had seen in the VR market. Just by dumb luck, we happened to pass by Paradigm, and he showed an interest in it, and I too was looking for a way to get him more engaged in his science lesson at school, get him motivated to learn about things he might not otherwise care about.
VictoryXR provides LBEs more than 50 units and 250 unique virtual reality learning experiences.
I was just really excited, and because when you do it, it's science, but in a much more fun way, and you're allowed to, sometimes when you have science lessons, you're not really allowed to interact with anything, but in this, you can actually do everything yourself that you probably wouldn't be able to do in a normal science class.
All VictoryXR experiences are aligned with the next-gen science standards, as well as the state standards in Texas and Florida.
It gives you what a book can't. I mean, they're moving, they're touching, they're operating everything with their hands. So it's a lot more hands-on and personal.
When it's time to expand beyond VR gaming, explore VR tutoring with VictoryXR.
So that is, obviously, that's a commercial that we created for our product. But whether you use our content or whether you use the content of someone else, the bottom line is that the possibility of being tutored in virtual reality is now a real thing. And while it is a concept that parents may not understand exists, and you might have to educate them on the possibilities, the great thing is that one of the challenges with learning for many students in a traditional classroom setting is they don't love it. They go to school because they have to. Maybe they enjoy seeing their friends. Maybe they enjoy recess or gym class, but they may not love the act of learning, sitting in a classroom. And so if that's the case, one of the things that we know improves outcomes for students is when you're able to get them to love what they learn. And as we all know, when a child or a student is in virtual reality, they're immersed in it and they love it. And it provides a way that they learn where they open their mind and they welcome that information in. And so as we educate parents and local educators, what we explain is that virtual reality brings 5 things to the table. And you don't have to write this down. I'll provide this slide deck if anybody wants it. But first of all, it's immersive. As you may know, many students, I certainly was one of those students growing up. They didn't call it ADD back then, but I had a great difficulty paying attention. I had a short attention span. I still have a short attention span. And so the fact that virtual reality is immersive is important for students learning. Auditory. Many people learn from hearing. And obviously, in at least our content and the content of many others, there is audio. And so we actually have a hologram teacher inside, and I'll talk about her a little bit later, but she teaches as well as creating what is our third benefit, which is experiential. So whether you are dissecting a frog, or I know that some of the other content out there has some great experiences as well, painting and art, or in ours, we built an amusement park called Force Field, where you can experience a world where the laws of nature, the laws of physics are suspended except for each one of Newton's laws, 1, 2, and 3, and then also Coulomb's law. So it's a fun amusement park to enter into. And then some people learn by seeing, sight and see. So I'm one of those people that learn when I see something, I remember it. When I hear it, I don't remember it as much. And so we provide this visual learning so that everything we're trying to teach also is in writing. Now, most of our content is in English. We have a little bit of Mandarin, but if you have English-speaking customers, then what we provide can particularly be helpful in the visual area. But finally, it's just fun. You want kids to love to learn, and when something is fun, they love to learn. And so in our marketing and in our sales to parents and schools, these are the 5 things that we emphasize. Let's talk about STEM field trips. So it's great to get parents signing up for 10 lessons in virtual reality for tutoring, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the business model later. But if you can get a school or a science club or a student group that brings a number of students in our facility, our max number is 28. And we break them into 5 different groups. And so we have a combination for our STEM field trips of virtual reality, augmented reality, and then also we have some computer gaming. And so as you can see there, you're going to design your field trip in your own way. And there's nobody better at this than Bill Tustin, but we break it into 6, 6, 6, 6, and then 4. And so sometimes they're on field trips, choosing, from 96 options, you work all this out with the educator in advance. Other times we have gamified learning, and we have 5 options for them to choose from. We have an augmented reality STEM park. So we've created some augmented reality products that bring dinosaurs to life, bring human cells to life. We also have for the United States, the Journey for Civil Rights, where we have 12 civil rights leaders. They're all portraits that hang on a wall, and when a child holds a tablet up to them or a phone, they come to life and they tell their story. And then we have some computer gaming and a STEM learning game where they're actually sitting down and playing a game in a computer. And then we have some cultural and historically significant locations in VR that they visit. So you have to, it all depends on how many headsets you have. We charge $25 per student for this, and that's up to 2 hours. Now, the reality is they're really only engaged for about 60 to 75 minutes because there's explanation time and switching time. But so if, for example, we're using a learning experience from a gaming platform that we're paying by the minute, then that is limited to about 60 minutes total on a 2-hour trip. So we're able to make money at that. And we try to have 1 staff person for every 8 students. So when we have a group coming in, we load up on staffing to the extent possible. So those are STEM field trips. homeschool drop-in days. Now, I don't know how this works around the world, but in the United States, homeschooling is a very big deal. There are about 2 million homeschool students in the United States. And so one of the things that we're working to get off the ground, and we haven't succeeded at this yet, but we're advertising it. And my guess is this is something we're going to have to advertise for 3 to 4 months for homeschool families to begin to say, okay, our field trip today, we're going to go down to Paradigm. And they do these regular field trips, and you just have to work it for a while. You can't market it or advertise for a week or 2 weeks and expect that you're going to change the way that people think. Anytime you introduce new technologies or new strategies, it really takes a lot of patience, and you have to push it for a long period of time. And then it starts to catch a little bit, and then it starts to get some momentum behind it, and then after a while, you hit critical mass. And so while we have some traction on the first 2 products, this is a new product that we started advertising about 4 weeks ago, and we expect that it's going to take a while to really move forward. But the concept is simply that you can drop in, we'll have our staff person there, you drop in, you pay during the day. We have very few people in our facility during the day right now, and so this is one of those things that we hope to really grow and add some revenue. One of the ways we do our marketing is we do a lot of Facebook marketing, and I know that in most countries around the world we have a fair amount of Facebook usage, but obviously there's plenty of platforms that you can use, whether it's Facebook or a different platform. You can see on the left, we test a lot of different images, but for the most part, what we try to do is, first of all, we in the text, we're going to go all caps on certain words and then lowercase, but we try to keep it short. We try not to use a lot of block text because, as everyone knows, when somebody sees a big block of text, it's a little bit off-putting. And so in this case, what we did was, we have a YouTube video. It's the video that you saw at the beginning that's promoting VictoryXR. When we work with VR arcades, we customize that specifically for the arcade. So, we take out the VictoryXR part and we put in the arcade so that people know who to contact. And so this specific video that you see in this Facebook ad is not the one you saw a few minutes ago. It's a different ad that promotes the arcade and not VictoryXR. So by doing that, we push this video out. And again, this is one of those things that takes a little bit of time. But we're charging $275 for 10 sessions, so roughly $27.50. Now, there are a lot of tutoring organizations in the United States, and I know China has a fair amount, and I'm sure Europe does as well, and Canada. For the most part, when you sign up for a tutoring package at one of these places, it's going to cost more than $1,000. So at $275, it's a fairly good deal, and it's not inexpensive. We also provide an option if parents just want to buy them a la carte by one. But what we push in our advertising is to try to get the $275. And so we push our YouTube ad, and we get a fair number of engagements. In this case, we had 154 link clicks to our landing page on $200 of spending. So we're pretty happy with that. Ultimately, we had 13 product views and got a couple of sales out of it. So in the early days, the advertising cost is going to be higher than we want. But we know that when you're starting a new business model, and again, I've started 4 companies, and in the early days, you have to invest more heavily in your marketing than you might want to. But after a while, it begins to catch some wind in its sales, and it begins to take off by word of mouth. And it's not a fast process at all. It's one of those things that again, you have to be faithful to marketing new products. And so The other thing that you want to think about with this is it's not just paid marketing. Every single parent who walks in your facility ought to leave with a little flyer about your education products. And obviously that's a very inexpensive way to do marketing. And sometimes in our community, people will say, hey, will you donate something? And so one of the things we donate are 4 free virtual reality science tutoring lessons. And we'll say it's a $100 value. So people say, okay, that's a nice value. And so then we get a little bit of free marketing. And when people come in, having more bodies in our place, there's some days when we're full and we can't handle more people, but most weekdays, I should say, we do have the capability of having more. So obviously everybody's going to approach this their own way. My recommendation, depending on where you are, if you're on one of the coasts of the United States or say in Toronto or London, you're probably going to charge more than this. If you're in the center of the United States or in less populated areas, you might charge a little less, but our field trips that we charge schools, $25 per child, that generally doesn't shock them. Now, having said that, to be fair, they do negotiate. So, okay, we're going to bring in 25 students, and so they're going to negotiate for a lower rate. Most seem to, and so you sort of look at what you can get down to. But starting at that $25 per child is a fair and reasonable place to start. And if you can get it, you want to hold it. And some people can get more. Tutoring, we do $275, but you may want to start at $250 for something that parents might think is more appealing. 10 lessons, and when we do our 10 lessons, we suggest doing 1 a week, but we're more than happy to do 2 a week if they want, or even 3. We don't really care too much. We mostly want them to come in though after school or Saturday mornings or Sunday afternoons when we have room. Obviously Friday nights and Saturday afternoons we're not looking to do our tutoring sessions, and so we keep it to that. And then for homeschool drop-in days, since this is generally a parent that's bringing them in, we charge a little bit less for this. And hopefully someday we're going to get to a point where we charge more, but currently we charge $15 per child. I want to talk a little bit about the concept of learning in virtual reality. Now that's the business model and some marketing. And Shabir, maybe I'll just stop for a moment before I go into this next section and see if there are any questions about the business model or the marketing.
Yeah, definitely. If anybody has a question, you could raise your hand or even put a chat on the chat window. But I would also like to let you guys know that we have a special page on Synthesis where you can download all the lesson plans and things like that. So, so once Steve finishes or completes after the Q&A, if you guys have any questions, you can also email us. Nobody has any questions as of now, so I guess you could continue.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, getting to the exciting stuff. This is the good stuff. This has a little bit of data, and this is the type of thing that it's good to share as you're marketing this. So this was a study that was done, and I got this from Alvin Wang Grayland. Alvin is the head of HTC Vive in China. And so what they did was they measured through EEG, they hook up these probes, or not probes, but they hook up measurement tools to a child's brain. And in the base state, when they're not learning, it measured 55.5. In a traditional class, the brain activity bumps up a little bit, by 2.6 to 58.1. But you'll see when they're learning in VR, it dramatically kicks up. All of those senses are being activated. And what's really interesting and exciting is that there's a 6x bump from learning in a traditional class to a virtual reality class. And so, that has to do with the engagement of the student, and how much the brain is working and taking in. And so this is a really great graph to use as you market your products. And again, you really want to use more than one marketing post. You want to try different things because one chart might, one graph, or one image might not appeal to all parents, but a different one might grab a few. So this is, to me, this was a really interesting study. And I think visually, it tells a really great story. This is one of the schools that use our products. And we sell licenses to schools, and that's great. But here's why I think virtual reality arcades have a very important place in the ecosystem. As all of us know, it's not inexpensive to get this virtual reality hardware. It's certainly becoming less expensive with say, the Oculus Quest and Vive Focus. But the bottom line is it costs money. And so it'll be a while before schools have all of this virtual reality hardware. So in the meantime, virtual reality arcades can play an important role. Hang on, I'm going to turn off a sensor real quick. Okay, so what the data says, and again, this is important in building your case. As you talk to educators, you want to put some slides together or a handout together that has some of this information. And this was again, you know, China really leads the way in a lot of VR learning. And so I'm thankful for what they've done and that they share it with the rest of us. In a 2016 test, the passing rate for groups that learned through VR was 90%, while the passing rate for the others was 40%. So, or at 40%, perhaps we should call it the non-passing rate. So that's a pretty dramatic number. It's a really great study, and you know, all of these studies are available online, and I can provide them as well. In a 2006 study, obviously before the modern era of VR, when it wasn't as engaging, mean test scores increased by 14%. The type of VR we can create today is much more engaging and a much better teacher. The other thing that when we build our content, and this is something that a lot of times when you're speaking to educators and you're trying to sell your product, you need to speak their language. And this is how curriculum specialists will speak about learning. So it's the VARK theory of learning, V-A-R-K. And what virtual reality brings to the table is all four legs to the VARK stool. So some people learn visually. Some people learn oral, like O-R-A-L, but A-U-R-A-L. Others learn through reading and writing. And finally, kinesthetic means to do, doing. Some people learn by doing. So you know, I had a brother-in-law who really was not very good in the classroom, but he could take apart a car engine and put it back together. You know, me, I'm like missing parts. I can't figure anything out. But he could learn extremely well kinesthetically. And so the beauty of VR is we can bring all four of these to the table. I'm going to show you, this is our most recent product that we just rolled out. This is a short video, but within this, we use all four of those methods. So what you don't see in the promo clip, but you'll see in most of our products, is Wendi the science teacher, and you know, what we try to do is really create a fun experience so kids, when they go back to the parents, they say, "Oh, I had so much fun can I go back? And obviously, as arcade owners, as LBE owners, we really want kids to say, I want to go back. And you know, when parents hear, oh, my kid wants to go back and shoot up some more zombies, that's one thing. But when kids say, oh, I want to go back and learn, it may not use the word learn, but that's what parents are hearing, because they know that child has spent an hour in a science learning environment. And so that's a very powerful thing if we can get kids to say that. So every child can learn from, in this case, it's a US centric, but from America's finest teachers. And so we use Wendi Martin, and she was a national finalist for Teacher of the Year. She's inside our experiences. Every single title that we have has Wendi somewhere in it, whether it's just her voice or whether it's actually her teaching, sometimes as a hologram, sometimes in a 360 video, but she does a lot of fun and crazy things. Our content was created not just by Wendi, the science teacher, but also by Renee, who is our curriculum specialist. And Renee, first of all, even though it's listed third on these bullet points, she was a high school classroom teacher, and that's important. So when you're creating content for other teachers or for students, it helps to have somebody who's actually taught. And then she went to work for Pearson and ETS. Pearson, the largest curriculum company in the world, I believe a British company. She has her master's in curriculum, and she was also a school board member, an elected member to manage 2 different school districts in 2 different states in the United States. Finally, she's a mother of 2 daughters, and so because of that, you know, I've never met anyone who understands teaching and learning from as many different perspectives as Renee. You know, she's been in the classroom, she's learned it from the business side as a mother, and then also from the school administrative side, so that's very helpful. Another really important piece is that in the US, and these standards are generally accepted around the world, but the United States has, within the last 10 years, adopted the next-gen science standards, known as NGSS. And so all of our content is aligned to the NGSS. And as Shabir mentioned, every single title that we put out has a 1-page learning sheet for parents or for teachers. And so they find that very helpful. If you're in Texas or in Florida, it's also aligned to TEKS, which is Texas, or CPALMS, which is Florida. So these can be, you know, as you're talking with educators, again, you have to speak their language. You have to talk about the things that are important to them when you're trying to get a STEM field trip in, or a class, or tutoring. And this is some of the language that you want to use, you know, aligned to NGSS standards. And that's a very big deal in the United States. But what you can say if you're not in the United States is it's aligned to National American Science Standards, which are very similar to standards around the world. You know, in social studies or history, you know, textbooks can be very different from country to country. But in science and in math, those are 2 subjects where it's very similar from country to country. We have more than 48 units, but our primary learning units are 48 units of science for middle school and high school. So roughly age 11, 12 through age 18, 19, depending where you're teaching. And each of them has, you know, interactive experiences for kinesthetic learning, stories for visual and audio learning, field trips around the world. And the field trips are pretty great. You know, students get to go learn engineering design on the Great Wall, photosynthesis in the Great Redwood Forests, genetics on an Iowa farm, earth formation in Iceland. You go to the jungles of Mexico, Singapore Gardens, a skyscraper in Hong Kong, and, you know, we have some fun ones. We take them on a field trip where we start at a toilet in a school, and then we travel all the way to the sanitation center where all that waste goes, and learn about the breakdown in biology. It's sort of gross, but it's sort of a fun science lesson for kids. And we also go to a landfill and teach environmental science. while the big machinery is breaking down the garbage in the landfill. So there's a lot of very interesting field trips around the world. 48 total field trips and then 48 lessons with Wendi. So a total of 96 trips. And we try to, again, make it fun. We have a race car game where students get a drive, and as they drive, then they're answering questions. So finally, our award-winning HTC Vive gave us the top award in the world for our frog dissection. We have a frog, a cat, a fetal pig, fish, and organs. For schools, or if they're going to come in, they may not be able to offer this, but this is a great way to learn. We've created Wendi as a hologram in there, and so she teaches students, and kids have a lot of fun learning this way. And in my opinion, it's a lot better than cutting open an actual cat or pig or frog, but that's just me. I never really enjoyed that in science class. So this isn't so much relevant for this group, but Microsoft loved our content enough that they licensed half of it, and they provide it. So I'll move on. If you have questions and want to learn more, so first of all, we're going to refer you to Shabir at SynthesisVR. But if you have questions about the content that maybe Shabir can't answer, we can talk to you about the content. But we worked out a special deal for that's below our standard pricing for SynthesisVR customers. And so on the ROI, you're going to spend, Shabir, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're going to spend $120 a month, and potentially if you're a very small arcade with a limited number of headsets, then Shabir has some special pricing. So talk to him about that. But if you get one field trip a month, or if you get one tutoring client a month, you're going to more than make your money back. And what we're providing is full access to all of our content. That includes Pteranodon's flight, all of the animal dissection, the 48 units of science, the life of Nelson Mandela, Mel and Gertie's molecular cell tour, and so much more. It is a lot of fun experiences. And then we can also, if you choose that you want some augmented reality experiences, that's not a part of this, but we can visit about that separately. So overall, one of the places that you can grow into is education trips, and we want to be a part of that with you. And so, and we love working with Shabir at SynthesisVR. They're really one of the great up-and-coming LBVR arcade companies in the world, and so we're thankful that we have the opportunity to work with them. And at this point, Shabir, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, and the cool thing with us is, even if you're from another platform, you can still license these all the VictoryXR products using Synthesis. We have like a free, subscription platform, like a CDN platform, where you can still license all these content. So even if you're from another platform, you don't have to feel like left out. And you can definitely license everything. And then as Steve mentioned, if you have any like smaller number of headsets, we can come up with a pricing point that works for the smaller arcades. But right now we have a pretty cool pricing point for arcades that have like, a larger number of headsets, and it's just one pricing that includes all the headsets. So it's a very cool offer. And as Steve said, if just doing one field trip, you can cover the whole cost and more. So, we are putting together all the lesson plans for all the subscribers. So, you can download each and every lesson plan. And then we're working close with Steve, and we'll come up with, we have the marketing and everything. So we'll send you all those guidelines so that way, and then some of the best practices. So not everybody feels left out. And, if you have questions, you can definitely work with us and Steve to come up with the best thing. And he also has created some field trips using his own Paradigm Arcade, which, we are more than happy to share, as he showed you as well. So you can break down the field trips into 2, 3, 4, depending on your you know, how many students are coming in and all that. So, you know, so that's the best part, you know, Steve is there to help and make sure that, because as you know, during the weekdays, especially during school hours, you know, there's a lot of downtime, and this is one good way to turn that into profit.
And I'll add, Shabir, that if a
go ahead, Steve.
If a VR Arcade LBE signs up with you, we also hold that offer out that we will customize that video for them to use, so they can push it out in their own social media and bring traffic into their arcade. So that's something we do at no charge. Just it helps us and it helps the customer. And
dissection is not for AR, it's for the VR. So you have frog dissection, pig dissection, the cat. So as Chad asked, it's not for AR, it's for VR. And Alex is asking if there's any content for special needs like dyslexic content. Steve, if you want to answer that.
Well, I can talk about that from a couple of perspectives. One, autism students on the autism spectrum have found our content to be useful and to be effective. And we have I have some research that I can share, and maybe I'll send that to you, Shabir, to distribute, but how effective virtual reality is with students on the autism spectrum. So that's something that is important, and for parents, it can be very helpful. So that's number one. Number two, because depending on what disability the child may have, for the most part, our product can be used if they just have use of their head and one hand. So we do have some products that are head only, where they don't have to use either their hand or their hands or their feet. But we do have plenty of students in wheelchairs that use our content currently, and but we don't have content, say, in any way specifically created just for students with disabilities. But for the most part, they found that our content can be adapted depending on the need.
Yeah, that's something, it's not a very intense game or something. So as Steve said, even if you're in a wheelchair, or if you're slightly disabled, people can still play and experience this content. Chad is asking if there is an example or a listing of the content for head tracking only.
For what?
Just for the use of the head, that, like you mentioned, the head tracking. Is there a list of content just on head tracking?
Yeah, we do have content like that. Yes, we have. I think 24 titles that just use the head tracking, and so we built it all like that initially because we were afraid students would lose the hand tools, but all of our customers wanted the hand tools, so we do have that. And I don't know if that's on the platform or not, so we would have to work individually with someone on that issue, but we do have it.
All right, that's good. So Igor is asking, how would you implement this program, for instance, if you have 16 headsets with 32 students for a 2-hour program? But that's something Steve covered initially, but if you want to elaborate on that, I could talk about that if you want to do that.
Yeah, so I would say 2 things on that. Number one, take a look at how we break up our STEM field trips on that slide. And again, we'll want to make sure we get you this slide deck so you can take a look at it. But number 2, if you have the ability to bring some augmented reality into your facility, if you have a location where you could use some of that, students share a tablet or a phone, and so you can split 16 students in your headsets and 16 students enjoying augmented reality and in groups sort of moving through the dinosaur park or the cellular biology or the space and planets. Any of those can work and or for example, if you're in the United States, the Journey for Civil Rights. So splitting them between AR and VR can be very helpful. Or what we do is we just put two students on a headset and they go back and forth. They trade it off. So there's a couple of ways to approach it, but AR is a good way to keep some kids busy.
Yeah, and to elaborate on Steve, what he said, he has some lesson plans that we can create, and we can, using the individual lesson plans for each and every experience, you can combine that with the field trip plan, so it should work very well. So one of the comment was, this is good info, but I think there's a gap between the education content we have available and actually reaching the schools. Do you want to comment on that, Steve?
Yeah, so as we all know, sales is not easy, but every single business in the history of this earth that has succeeded has, in one way or another, been built on either sales or viral marketing. And so there's two ways to succeed. You either have to go to the schools, drop off a flyer, or what I do is, and we visit with the schools individually. There's no way around it, so I've got a staff person that does that. But at the same time, when I do my Facebook marketing, I make sure that anybody who identifies as an educator, that my marketing is dropping into their Facebook feed. So we get people that are not educators that see it. We're going to target between the ages of generally about 28 and 52 parents of children who would be in like middle school or high school. But I also add there to make sure that every single person in our community that's an educator sees our marketing dropping in. So it does take time, but you know what? It's a product people love, and so it works. But it does take some dedication on the sales and marketing side.
All right. Any other questions? One of the things we were facing is, like, especially like in most of the big school districts like LA, USD, all that, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and in getting the schools to come in and participate. So how would you tackle that? Would you ask the schools, maybe ask the teachers individually to maybe do like private field trips? So what do you think would be the best way to go about that?
Yeah, so first of all, we do free, like we'll set aside a 2-hour period and invite educators to come in for free and try it out. And so, come test it out, see what you think, see if this would be appropriate. Again, it's not easy, but you're giving it away for free, so people will come in and try it out. That's really the best way to get people in. We are now working with a local mental health organization that works with troubled youth, and we are putting together a curriculum to use for those troubled youth and a grant. So, we're going to help them fill out the grant, and then that money is going to come to us, but it's going to come to us to service the youth that they're working with. And they're just looking for ways to try to get through these kids who've grown up in violent homes or parents with drug addiction. And what we all know is that even these kids, once they're immersed in VR, they do pretty well there. Maybe not every child, but an awful lot of them. So free tours and then helping with grants can make a big difference.
Thank you, Steve. So one of the questions is, are there any written or video instructions on how to use titles? Some teachers that tried them found some titles confusing, but I think that's, as Steve and I also said, we have lesson plans that explains each and everything. Maybe it wasn't updated or mentioned, so maybe you can you can email us, info@synthesisvr.com. We can email you the lesson plan and maybe go through it. Or we can even have, you know, even when I was looking at it, I might, you know, since I'm not an educator, if somebody, you know, maybe the arcades might have found it confusing. So maybe we can go through a lesson plan, maybe with one of your teachers. Maybe that might help the arcades to see how they can explain what's in a lesson plan, how the experience is outlined. Do you think that would help?
We're willing to do whatever. You know, we would certainly put Renee, our curriculum specialist, on the phone or in a webinar or whatever the case might be. Now, I would clarify, she does not call them lesson plans. As a teacher, she says this is not quite a lesson plan. What she calls them are teacher support pages, because they have the answers to the quizzes. So our titles actually have quizzes in them. So it has the answers to the quizzes. It has the NGSS standards, which teachers have to know as they are working on it. And then it has a description of each experience in that title. So she would call it a teacher support page. You know, as a layman, people like me that are non-educators, I casually throw around the words lesson plan, but that's not how she would describe it.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I could also explain that also, like, yeah, even initial. So every content is explained properly. So maybe there was some confusion or maybe a miscommunication on our part. So we could, you know, update on that as well. So that shouldn't be a problem. Have you ever reached out to colleges to see if the education department would experiment with your program? That's a question from Alex.
Yeah, so we have colleges that use our dissection, because our dissection products are freshman level, maybe sophomore level in college, so year 1 or year 2 in college. And our dissection products were created with Carolina Biological as our partner. They are the world's leading curriculum specialist for animal dissection. And so they actually worked with us to put this together, and that's why it's extremely well respected. And those are the products that colleges would currently are looking at, and a couple of them are using it.
Cool. Another question is, do you think a venue serving alcohol could have a negative impact on an educator's decision to bring in a class?
Well, that obviously depends on the cultural standards of each community. We do have a bar with some cans of beer in it that we open up in the evenings, but we don't, obviously, none of that is opened up during our school trips. So, you know, and for parents coming in on homeschool day, there's no alcohol that served at that hour. And, you know, this is just the way we do it. And then for tutoring, if they come in after school or on Saturday mornings, again, we're not serving alcohol during those hours as well. But if they bring their child in on Friday night or Saturday night, there's probably going to be some cans of beer that are sold.
Yes, definitely. I think it all matters depending on the time. You know, if you're coming during a daytime, shouldn't be a problem. But at night, you know, parents also expect that. So I think it's a matter of, as you said. What's the youngest age program you offer?
Well, our VR goes down to 5th grade, grade 5, which is about 11 years of age. Our augmented reality goes down to about 3rd grade.
Good.
Obviously, it depends on the maturity of the children, but that's how we do it.
Okay. How do we license your AR media? I think you could email Ty, you know, and then, you know, you could license it. So if you could just put up Ty's email address, maybe she could answer those, or, you know, you can always email us and we can give you that information as well. So, and Casey also mentioned there's a large homeschool community in Sioux Falls. So if you can just email Ty at VictoryXR, so regarding your AR media. So any other questions? If you want to add anything, Steve, regarding marketing, because I think that is the biggest, barrier between bringing schools and also the bureaucracy. So maybe if you want to add some few pointers that you haven't spoke about.
I would say this. First of all, for most VR arcades that are getting off the ground, if you're an independent arcade, you're probably not going to hire a marketing firm. So it's very important that you dedicate the time to learning how to do basic Facebook or social media marketing yourself. We also email twice a week to our email list. And, there are a lot of different services that you can use for emailing. But here's the bottom line. You have to be dedicated to it. And one of the challenges with small companies that go out of business is they spend 100% of their time working in the business, and they spend no time working on the business. My recommendation is to discipline yourself to spend potentially 70% of your time working in the business and 30% of your time every day, or at least per week, working on the business. Working on the business means studying things like how to make Facebook marketing work, Instagram marketing, maybe create a TikTok video. All of this can be learned online in 30 minutes or less. And then as you go to do your social media targeting, almost everybody gives you the ability to really do some specific geographic targeting, some gender targeting, some age targeting. And so what we have found is that for different products, different groups of people. So homeschool marketing is primarily female marketing in our area. But the tutoring is not necessarily female or male. It works for both because, sometimes you might have a father who is who's divorced and gets his children on the weekend. So he might bring them in and have them do something that's both constructive educationally, but also fun, something that kids love. So these are things to think about, but work on the business. Dedicate yourself to working on the business and learning how to do your own do-it-yourself marketing, which isn't that hard.
That's awesome. That's very good advice. And what about, you did speak about tackling schools, educating them, giving them free sessions. Do you want to add something to it? Or, how to tackle the big school districts? If you have any, if you want to add any thoughts to it.
Yeah, I would say, most of us know 1, 2, 5, 10 school teachers. To the extent that you can get somebody on the inside and give them free passes to an education party at Paradigm. Say, here's 10 free passes. Do you mind distributing these to some teachers who would be interested in participating in this? And, that's the type of thing that you can do to start. Cold calling is not easy. So it sure helps if you can find some educators who are interested in. And as you may know, you're going to have teachers that walk into your facility. So you want your staff to be trained to be aware of that and to know that you want to strike up a conversation. One of the most difficult things I have to do is to train my staff, who are generally young males in their 20s. And a lot of them are more technically savvy than sales savvy. And you need the technical side, but you also need them to be trained in sales. And so we work on that all the time. We also have a slide presentation that is shown on a wall. And it runs constantly while people are in our facility. And so we basically are advertising on their upcoming events, tutoring, STEM field trips, all of those sorts of things to make sure that while people are standing around, they might look up there and see what's coming up.
Thank you so much. We always asking, in cold calling a school, if you're, which person should I look to talk to, the director, specific teacher, or supervisor? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's different in different places, but most schools are going to have a head of the science department, or they're going to have a PTA or PTO parent that might be good to get a meeting with. Sometimes the vice principal can be helpful, and sometimes there's a curriculum specialist. It's difficult to know exactly which one, so frequently if you can get a meeting with one, and maybe they're interested, maybe they're not, but you give them a handful of flyers and say, do you mind giving these to some of the other folks, you know, maybe the PTA, maybe the principal, you know, the head of the science department, et cetera. Frequently, they'll slide those in that person's mailbox in the office, and or, you know, a lot of times you might be able to find email addresses online. So if you go to the school district's website, frequently they will list, you know, key people in their email address for parents to reach out to. So you have to be a little bit creative, but again, it gets back to working on the business, not just in the business.
And Colin would like to share something with everyone. So he has some experience in marketing. So I'm just going to unmute him. So yeah, go ahead.
Hey guys.
Colin.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my name's Colin Parnell. I'm in the UK, in England. We have a 30-station virtual reality centre. We call it a centre rather than arcade because we knew we were going to go after the education market. So we kept the word arcade out of our title. So that was one little thing that I would suggest that anybody who's setting up in the future does. And if they're after the education market, it's a simple little thing, but it did help us. We actually employed someone to go around to all the schools on a regular basis to try and get through to the teachers. They came across the gatekeepers, you know, the secretary that won't let you get through and everything. But eventually they did, and we slowly got a trickle of people through, and it snowballed, as you'd expect, as more and more teachers talk to other teachers. So it became quite popular, really. But the one thing I was going to mention was that one of the things we tried, which turned out to be quite successful, after realizing very quickly that in the UK, at least, our teachers are really time poor. I'm not sure whether it's the same in the US, but definitely in England, teachers are just literally working so hard for probably average pay, and they get very little spare time. So the time issue is something that is quite crucial. To give them the ability to come in at any time, we found to be important. We offer to teachers free visits at any time to come in and do research. We give them a separate room. We've got a separate, like a sort of conference room that we allow them to go in and write notes and stuff. But something else we tried was we tried teachers' nights, and we literally had 3 nights in a row. It was, I think, a Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Thursday. So it was middle of the week. And we sort of had an open evening. We sort of closed to the general public for those 3 nights. And it was literally just teachers, and they could turn up when they want. They could go and do whatever they wanted. We had all our 30 headsets all up and running, doing different titles. So they could walk over to that one and it was doing Titanic, and that one was doing Apollo, and that one was doing Google Earth, etc. And if they had time, I would normally go over to them, have a little chat and show them some videos and stuff about how education is, you know, positive in all the things you've been talking about earlier, basically. So I just wanted to let everyone know that, really, because it's really working well for us. It's early days. We've now decided to have we've got a production studio anyway that does business, corporate virtuality, but we've decided we're going to do some education titles specifically for the UK, because obviously you guys are concentrating on the American curriculum and leaving us out. So we need something in the UK, which is what we'll be doing. So if there's anyone on here that is UK based, they can contact us at some point, and we'll put them out on probably Synthesis and all the other platforms. So that was it. Any questions for me as well? I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Colin, so much for that. And that's amazing. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, you could type it in, and I could definitely ask Colin about it as well. So does anybody else have any other questions? Or if they want to add something, just let me know. I could unmute them.
Shabir, this is Steve Grubbs. I want to thank everybody for listening, and on behalf of VictoryXR and our staff, we appreciate it. I need to head to my next meeting, and so I'm going to sign off, but thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and we are going to put this up. We're going to record. We have it recording, so I will make sure that it's available to everyone. So thank you so much and have a good day.